Yeah. Ooh. God, that sounds good. My guest, ladies and gentlemen, is the most wonderful pianist, Marc Copland.
Good afternoon.
Uh,
Nice to be here.
yeah. So, wow. You not only have been one of my favorite piano players for a long time, for years. I don't even, let's see, when I think I told you I discovered, or I told some people, I discovered your record with Dieter on the ABC Islands. I had a gig there and I was wandering around and I went into a record store and there was the record. Two-way street, right?
Yeah, what's the ABC Island?
Let's see. Aruba, Curacao,
Oh,
and
I get it. Yeah, got
yeah,
it.
I forget the B. I forget the B one.
Yeah,
It's
me
right
too.
outside of Venezuela.
Right.
It's a very nice area, especially the smaller islands are really, really
Mm.
beautiful. But yeah, and I saw it. Something about the cover obviously attracted me. It was a CD, and and then I was like, oh my God, I am so lucky. I found this this recording. Ah, and and then of course you play with so many of my favorite musicians. That's I grew up in a standard jazz, you know, environment, but then once I got into college, I started listening to more modern stuff.
Well, standards can be modern too.
That's so true. Actually, Dave
Mm.
Liebman was talking about that yesterday. He was saying that, you know, how a lot of the big guys that he played with would play the same set over and over and over and over and over again for like 2 years, you
Mm.
know, and which would, uh, yeah, I think he mentioned Sonny Rollins maybe playing kind of what we might consider goofy songs, you know, with not many changes, and he was asked why, and he said, "Because I can." So there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that what I remember from when I dropped in yesterday was his story about asking Elvin, how many times did you play my favorite things? A
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. I think Dave said he tried to figure out it was like 1,500.
1,500. Yeah. Yeah. And then Elvin's remark was great. He said every night we played it like we wasn't going to be around tomorrow.
Yeah. And such a message, right, to a young Dave
Yeah.
Liebman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how
Well,
you better
Elvin,
play.
I mean, I heard I heard him play so many times. I mean, not with Train. I was too young. Never
Yeah.
heard Train.
Yeah.
But I heard Elvin pre Dave and Steve Grossman and during Dave and Steve Grossman a lot.
Ah,
And I mean, he brought it every night.
huh.
There was no just showing up and mailing it in with Elvin.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty, and even physically, he was a until he got very old and frail, he's kind of a strong guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was I mean, it was inspiring.
Do you think that, well, obviously, everything we listen to gets inside us, but was his energy something that you kind of made a little bit of your own?
I mean, one of, but the thing is, the energy I felt from Bill Evans was just as strong, even though superficially, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Elvin's he's hitting them drums.
Yeah.
And Bill's a whole different thing. But I mean, the strength is just as palpable. You know,
Yeah.
it's a different approach, um, different canvas, different colors, what have you. But the strength is there. I mean, when somebody's really playing, when they're in the middle of a really could be a short period or a long period. I mean, there's no mistaking it. And I remember living in Washington, D.C., and the big club there for years was Blues Alley.
Yeah.
And I guess I was there late 70s, mid to late 70s, up through 83. Then I moved back to New York. But, Dexter Gordon would come to town all the time, Joe Henderson. This is the community was great in supporting the club. So I remember I went down one, because I worked there all the time as house pianist. So when I wasn't working, I could come in, you know. So I went down to hear Joe Henderson. I figured I'll come, blah, blah, blah. Rhythm section was weird. I don't want to mention any names, you know, good players. It just didn't, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Joe was like unbelievable. Every every phrase, it was like fresh. You know, I didn't hear any of the usual Johann licks, of which there are a lot, but I mean, and I intended to stay one set. I stayed for both sets. That was Tuesday night. Thursday night, I was like, I got to go check this out again. I ended up 6 sets, 3 nights. I couldn't stay away. The son of a gun, he never repeated himself once. And look, I heard him plenty over the years. I had friends in the band. Pete Yellen was a friend of mine, alto player. He was in the band
Yeah.
at one point in the sextet. Um, I knew Stanley Clark a little bit. He was a younger guy from Philly, where I grew up. And blah blah. And you know, the band was always good, but Joe, you know, sometimes he was into playing, sometimes he wasn't. But there was a period where he was like really bringing it. And that week at Blues Alley, I'll never forget it. And then interestingly, a younger musician whom I know, who hires me occasionally here in New York, I told him the story. He goes into the internet, finds a bunch of like
Oh,
bootlegs, right,
yeah.
from Europe, and says, I found these 8 or 10 bootlegs, and this one from so and so, and this one from so and so remind me of what you were talking about. And I started playing them, and I was like, yep, there it is, you know. So he just had a period where he was on for whatever reason. Who knows, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Who knows about I've also seen that. I mean, singers especially, Ella. Uh, I think the heavier singers, that period of time, I think Carmen was the only one who actually stayed fresh till the end. Ella and Sarah, they kind of fell into this, uh, not exactly phone it in, but whatever was real easy. But Carmen was always on the edge. She always pushed herself. She did new material. She was always in the moment. Her last record actually was that one where she's singing monk tunes, and
Mhm.
that was one of my favorite records that she had done. She was so on and at her best.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I mean, who knows what it is? I know what it is for me is if I'm spending time in my instrument working on my stuff, then it shows. Then I play better at night. You
Yeah.
know. I think I'll put it to the test sometime in the next year, I hope.
I know it's kind of hard when you're not actually going out and playing.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, this
Yeah.
is a big week coming up because I haven't, I was playing with cats, every now and then in my home, and then we stopped that around November because it was just getting too hairy. And now some of us are vaccinated, so we're going to get together again. That's going to happen in the next couple weeks. So I'm very excited, see how it feels.
It should be interesting. I just wonder if there'll be like kind of a new voice coming out of jazz, after all this.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've been putting in a lot of time working on some stuff, and I don't have it as fluent as I want yet, but I've definitely been trying to make good use of the time. And if enough people have been doing that, that'll be amazing. And for sure, I mean, there's a lot of pent up creative energy. I mean, all of
Oh
us
yeah.
have. You know.
The gigs that I have seen, and I've done a
Mm.
few gigs too, but the ones that I've seen kind of more recently, I mean, the energy is just blowing off of the musicians and the
Yeah,
audience too. And I get
yeah,
like there's one gig that I see every 2 weeks. It's a guitar player named Brad Rabuchin, and he has different piano player sometimes, and Ahmet Turkmenoglu on bass, and well, last week he had Mark Ferber on drums.
Mhm.
The week before he had Chris Wabich, but um, the energy blowing off of them is like wow, and even the audience, who I suspect at least half of them are not super jazz people, they just are applauding, and
Yeah,
it's like thank you.
yeah. I think we all miss it. And
Yeah,
Mark Ferber's a great drummer. He's one of the guys who's going to be coming over soon because he's going to head back this way.
he's one of my
Um,
favorites.
oh yeah, he's great. He's great.
So elegant and playing. I had him and his brother on a few weeks ago, and um, yeah, I had never asked him if he had focused on his physical movements when he played, and he had. It's in his learning there was, I forget exactly what he said, but it was definitely like something that was on his plate to study, and he
Oh, cool.
certainly did that beautifully.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
few people on here. There's a bunch of people who are saying hello. Lisa Rich.
Is there any way I can see that, by the way?
Well, you could go on a different.
I could go onto Facebook, I
You
guess, and
could,
see it that way.
yes, you could. You could open a side window, which is what I do. And
Yeah, do that. But in the meantime, go ahead, tell me who's
yeah,
around.
Lisa Rich, who I never know who she knows and who knows her. She's a singer
Right.
in DC.
Oh
Joyce
yeah, we know
Glasgow.
each other. Who's that?
Joyce Glasgow, who's like a big supporter out of Seattle.
Right.
Uh, an English chap, Robin Blakeman. He's always here. Toby Simmons, Roland Ascaruns, and Michael Patterson. I know you know.
Right.
He said hello, favorite people.
Ah,
And Mike Steffens.
Mike Steffens, of course.
Yeah.
He's our connection.
Exactly. And then there, L.M. Booker, and yeah. Okay. So that's so far. But who are saying hi?
All right. Well, hi to everybody. I'm still looking for this link. I'm so slow with this stuff.
Well, I'm impressed you got on. Some people have a lot of trouble with that.
I don't know. It sounds to me like it's setting the bar pretty low, but I'll take it.
Well, yeah, I think so too. But sometimes
Why
it.
no? Wait, if I just go to the Facebook thing I posted and click my own link, that'll do it. The one you sent me.
Yeah, it's my Facebook page. I have two.
Yeah,
I have a music page and a personal page, but this.
yeah. I haven't, but and I can't tell one from the other. I get all right. There it is. Now I see me. This is really weird. Click to expand. Then
Kind of
how do I?
move that.
There's the sidebar. Bingo.
Yeah. Oh, and you have to
Bingo.
turn the sound down on it.
All right, there it is. Now I see. Oh
You
yeah,
see
there's a real weird echo now, right?
Yeah, if you click on the picture itself, you'll see.
I'm gonna close it up. It's too confusing.
Okay, I can tell you stuff anyway.
You'll just have to tell me. That's all. You know.
Who is let's see, who is on the record that we heard just now? That was
That's
so great.
Ralph Alessi on trumpet, Drew Gress on bass, Joey Barron on drums, and that particular piece, which is called Mr. DJ, um, it's sort of not an anagram, but in the first place, MRDJ is Mark, Ralph,
Oh.
Drew, and Joey, right?
Yeah.
In the first place. In the second place, hey, Mr. DJ, you know. And in the third place, my son's initials are DJ.
Oh.
So it was an easy title, but I try and do this, or I don't try. It seems to happen almost every record I do is we just start playing something, you know. And in the last 2, 3, 4 years, the instigator is usually Joey, because Joey will start playing some kind of groove, and we just start piling on, you know, and that's it.
He's a lovely guy. I actually have a picture of he and I at the gig that you did with John too
At the
at
bakery.
MI. No, it was
Yeah.
at MI.
Well, but it was a bakery thing.
Oh, right, right,
Yeah.
right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
You and I spoke about that actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a cute picture of Joey and I. So Joey, when he lived here, he was we were playing together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. He's great. He's great.
You have somebody else on YouTube saying hi, Corinne Giddings.
Ah, yeah. Old friend.
Yeah. Oops. I gotta close my door because a man who lives with me came in. Hi, honey. Yeah. Whoops. Yep. So, um, you sent me a beautiful amount of music, and they're pretty different too. Your CDs. I mean, they have, I guess, because they have different personnel. You have, let's see, like the Marc Copland piano trio. And now, why does it say Gary? Was that my mistake?
Well, there's an album called Gary, which is it's like the John album. It's a
Oh,
solo piano album of all Peacock tunes.
oh, okay. Yes.
And I
Right.
did that about, I want to say 3 years ago, something like that. Um, and Gary was still alive at that time. And because I remember quite clearly, speaking to him about it on a few different occasions and telling him what was going on. And and then it was two days of recording session, and the associate producer, whose name is Stefan Oskaritsian, he wanted me to record this tune called Random Mist. So I'm listening to it. It's just a bass solo, right? I forget the name of the record it's on. And for the life of me, it sounds like Gary's just blowing, except it starts out with this beautiful lyrical melody that, because of the way it develops, on the one hand, you think, well, it's a little too loose to be a tune. But on the other hand, you think, well, he just wouldn't start playing like that. It's so melodic and slow and gorgeous. So I called him up from France. I said, man, I said, this guy wants me to record Random Mist. And he laughed. He said, well, I'm just improvising. I said, well, that's what I figured. So it was kind of tough, but I picked a place that I thought sort of worked as the end. And I made the melody stop there. And then I said, is that okay? And he laughed. He said, sure, do whatever you want. you know. And then it worked. It kind of worked out good, I think. But I mean, I was frantically like figuring out, learning it the night after the first session and before the second one, because I was trying to dodge it. And the guy said, no, you should really do this. And then I kind of got into it.
That's interesting. So I'll have to take a listen to that. Do you think it kind of firmed up into a
And,
song?
oh, absolutely. But the thing is, it's sort of a loose, vague ending, but that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just, I thought, if I end it sooner, it's too early. If I let it go on later, then it's clearly he's just blowing. So I sort of picked a spot where it seemed like there, you know, and it seems to work.
Yeah. And then you have John,
Yeah.
dedicated to John Abercrombie.
That's the album of all Abercrombie tunes. And what happened was, after John passed, which was a heavy time for me. Um, I phoned the producer, whose name is Philippe Guilmetti, in France, and I said, you know how we did Gary? He said, yeah. Said, I want to do John. Same thing. Are you down? He said, sure, of course. Um, And between him and me and Stefan, the associate producer, we settled on what tunes we wanted to do, because John wrote a lot of tunes over his life. But I think we came in with a nice mix. The one that was hard was also John's brother-in-law, who's still around, lives in California. He and the producer both wanted me to do this thing called Remember Him, Hymn. And it's a play on words, because he kind of meant also remember him, Him, and he wrote the tune in memory of Colin Walcott. And the tune, the way he recorded it for Manfred, was just guitar synths. John's not really playing, he's just laying down textures and chords. And Mike Brecker is playing the melody and then blowing on it. And it's just
Wow.
heart grabbing,
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, all right, but this is great, but there's all these, first of all, it's a challenging tune.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's like there's all these layers of guitar synths and big thick chords. And I'm like, how am I going to do that on piano without overplaying it? And, and Gary, the brother-in-law, not Gary Peacock, Gary Lefkowitz, he kept encouraging me, and I don't think I can do it. And then Philippe, the producer, says, yeah, you should do this. And I'm like, I don't think I can do it. And like the first day we went in, I said, how am I going to do this with all the synths and everything? He says, well, I know what you mean. He said, just forget about it. And this little light bulb went off, And it actually worked out good. That was the hardest one, I think. The rest was pretty easy. Obviously I'd played a lot of his music, especially in the last 5-6 years of his life when I was in the band.
Yeah. Is that one, should I play some of that or a little?
Yeah, that video, sure.
So
will we see that on the screen?
Yeah, we will.
Because there's that moment. It's a really funny moment.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me get that up. And let's see. Where did I get that? Oh, yeah. That's the problem with too much organization, man. You never know where you organize.
It's very cool.
Okay, so opening that up.
Wait a minute. Is that it?
Yeah, this is it. And then, but
you
wanted me to start around
8:30.
Okay.
Roughly.
Okay, here we go.
So this is the tune Vertigo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so gorgeous.
Lovely theme.
Gorgeous. Wow. This is such a beautiful, beautiful concert, beautiful band. Gee.
Yeah, it's a nice tune. It's a tricky one because there's all kinds of bars of 4 and 6 and 3, but it after a while it felt natural, playing it for a little while.
Yeah.
Um, but I just love that. I don't know if you caught it, that moment when I'm starting to play and John goes, because he knows exactly what I'm going to do next, and he sort of grins.
I saw
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Your solo is really beautiful. And actually, just something I noticed. I saw Keith Jarrett play in Japan, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, or yeah, it was not too, it was kind of at the end of their playing together, and
Mhm.
it astounded me that his solo. I guess I hadn't studied his playing all that much, before then, but his solo was this incredible art of motivic connection. He would make a motive for 3 times and then take that last one and make it a new motive, and then the whole solo is like that. And I was so
Mhm.
blown away by, how many years that must have taken to become artful at that.
Mhm.
And just listening to you now, it's a different. Of course, it's different because you're a different person and player. But I heard that as well, and it was really beautiful. Wow, what you were playing was just really beautiful.
Well, thanks. I mean, it was a special band, and kept the rhythm section together to play trio for a while. Still trying to do that. Um,
Yeah, Joey
and
Barron. I mean, he must be one of your favorite drummers.
he is. I mean, we spoke about Mark Ferber. I like him a lot.
Yeah,
We had our last tour was in February last year. Right before everything shut down in March,
yeah,
and Joey made the first night, but he played ill. He did not have corona,
Uh,
but he was real sick. And I said, man, why did you even come? You know, go back to, he has a friend in Berlin. I said, go back. He said, well, I wanted to try. I said, man, come on. He said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to get on the phone, you know. And I had three really wonderful drummers pinch hit for him, and got very lucky that way. And there's a young German who was one of the three named Jonas Bergwinkel, and we liked him a lot. So we're going to do some more stuff with him coming up because, you know, Joey had some other commitments this year. If anything happens this year, we don't even know, you know.
so true.
So knock on wood.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I try and guess which area of the planet is going to open up first for playing. It's kind of hard. I mean, Europe is so, you know, um, kind of enclosed, and they seem to be really kind of freaking out, and also, getting the new morphing of the virus, and so it's kind of hard.
yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the thing that's disappointing is, I mean, that's the wrong word. I'm obviously I'm very happy that in America it seems like the vaccination's really ramping up in spite of some people not taking this thing seriously enough. But Europe is not doing so well that way, and you know, Europe's where many of the musicians I know, including myself, make big chunk of our living. And so if they're late getting their stuff together, that impacts us even more, you know. But what can you do? You know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, I was trading messages with a pianist whom I know in Argentina, and I said, "What's going on down there?" Yeah, he said, "Oh yeah, we have gigs down here." I'm like, "Whoa," you know. So I guess everywhere is different, you know.
Yeah, I was talking to Flora Purim, and she's in South Brazil,
Right.
and they still haven't quite fully opened up, you know.
Right.
Um, in Japan, I was supposed to go to Japan last March, and I kind of waited till the last minute to cancel, but it's funny because I was going to Hiroshima, Osaka, and Tokyo. And Hiroshima, he said, come on, it's no big deal, come on. Osaka said, you should come. I think the Japanese people will rally and it'll be fine and people won't want to stay home. And then Tokyo, my friend said, do not come. And she was
Right.
she was the doctor.
Right.
So, and plus I make a lot of my money teaching in very tiny rooms, and that wasn't going to happen, you know.
No.
So, you know.
No, it's a tough time. You know, it's a really tough time. And uh, the last two, three big, you know, cancellation decisions that I had to make, I was talking to the people involved. I said, "Come on, get real. This isn't going to happen."
Yeah.
You know, um, this summer maybe outdoors,
Hmm.
spaced out, maybe some stuff can happen. I don't know. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I'd like to believe that.
Yeah.
Going back to talking about your records, then there's Nightfall.
Mm.
Tell us about Nightfall a little.
It's another solo record. And it's, you know, what did I do? I did a couple of mine, a couple of Gary Peacocks, a couple of Ralph Towners, a couple of Johns, and yeah, that was a nice one. I did a fair amount of CDs with the word night in the title. You know, there's All Blues at Night, which I think I sent you
Yes.
MP3s of.
Yes.
There's At Night. There's uh, Nightfall, and there's Night Whispers. And I mean, I like them all, but the night thing seems to come up a lot. I think there's a. I'm trying to remember if it's a Van Gogh quote or a Hemingway quote, but there's some kind of quote about night and how things get started at night or something like that. And I had that quote in the jacket of this CD I did for Sunnyside years ago called At Night. And then it just kind of stuck, and it kept coming up in different ways. Um, I don't know.
Okay, well, and that, but then you had poetic motion, nothing to do
Yeah,
with night. I'm just
yeah.
saying.
Pardon me?
I'm just saying,
Yeah, yeah.
nothing to do
Yeah,
with
no,
night, and no song
fair
on
enough.
there, no
Fair
song
enough. Well,
actually is about night.
yeah, I mean, I think 4 or 5 titles with the word night is enough. you know. Um, Poetic Motion was heavy. That was my first solo album, and I did
Oh,
not want to do it. But this producer I mentioned earlier, Philippe Gilmetti, who's also produced the Gary and the John albums, he came to see me at a trio gig in Paris at a club called the Duc de Lombard.
hmm.
And he came up, he introduced himself, and it turns out he had spoken with a Swiss distributor I know named Alex Schmidt. And Alex had said, you should check Marc out. So he came down. And I remember because there weren't that many people in the club, and he was sitting there listening like this the whole set. He was really concentrating. And he came up to me and he said, I want to record you, but I don't want to record the trio. I want to record you solo. And I was really not ready for that. But, I was a little bit older and a little bit wiser than when I was younger. And if somebody didn't offer me exactly what I wanted, I would say no. I said, okay. And, he had a label and called Sketch in France. Actually was doing really nice stuff for about 6, 7 years. And then they just went belly up, one of those things.
Mm.
But, and then, and I either he decided or I decided, or it just happened that, I was going to write almost the whole album, which I'd never done. Typically, I write 2 or 3 tunes out of 8 or 10. So that was an added challenge. And, I was nervous about doing a solo album. I really was, because
Yeah.
I consider myself more of a trio player or a quartet player. Um, but he heard it, and in the end I think it came out very nice. And the CD, I mean, this was in 2001, 2002, something like that, when CDs were still kind of a viable viable thing. And he basically only had distribution in France, Japan, and a smidgen in Germany, you know but nothing in the United States to speak of.
Yeah.
So he was kind of operating with one hand tied behind his back because his distribution wasn't great. And there were some returns, but the last time I spoke to him about it, he said, "Oh, we sold about 10,000 records."
Hmm.
And this was in 6 months, you know.
Wow.
And then everything stopped because he had financial problems.
Ah,
But we
wow.
were going great guns. So um my I just sort of trusted him, and my trust was not misplaced because he didn't demand I play anything. you know he had very strong opinions and we'd have discussions. Well, we usually ended up agreeing one way or the other. Or I'd get this and he'd get that, however it worked out. But in general, he was down with what was happening. And um he walked in. I'll never forget this. He walked in. Uh, twice during the session to the piano room. Otherwise, he stayed in the control room. It's this big, beautiful studio in the south of France called La Buisson. And the first time he said, could you record Naima? And this had to do with something very personal with the owner of the studio, who was a friend of his, and blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. And that worked out okay. And then he comes in the next day and he says, I just want you to do one thing. I want you to record Love Theme from Spartacus, which, Bill did on Conversations. And I said, okay. And he left the room and I was ready to go to pieces. I was like, how am I going to do this? Because, the Conversations, it's triple tracked, right? Remember, 3 pianos, Bill dubs, overdubs, and it's just, it's very hard for me to listen to that track even today without tearing up. It's just a gorgeous track, And I just thought there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. I sort of felt like somebody had handed me a can of paint and said, go into that church and throw this paint all over the place, I didn't want to do it. And that worked out well also, So it was the start of a really nice relationship. I trust him. I got lucky, he's been very good. Jason Seitzer, whom I did 8, 9 records with for Pirouette Records in Germany with, he was great. Didn't say much when he did. It was on the money. And of course, Manfred Eicher, I did 4 records in 2 or 3 years, 2 with Gary and 2 with John, which is a lot,
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky. I got to, gotten to partner with a lot of really good people with good ideas.
Yeah. Now you want me? Now I want to hear Spartacus. I
You
love
hear,
that.
oh, well, you can.
Can I?
Yeah, sure.
I played with this legendary guitar player named Ted Green, and he loved theme. He was a very unusual player. He played bass, chords, and the melody line all at once. And he wrote a book called Chord Chemistry, which was like the Bible for all guitar players, and a really interesting guy. But anyway, he loved themes, movie themes, and Spartacus. I remember that one. He just adored that one. And it would be really nice. Let me see if I can pull that up. I don't mean to make you cry.
No, well, that's when Bill plays it.
Ah.
When I play it, who knows? I haven't heard this in years,
Oh. It's so interesting how we have so many lifetimes filled with things,
Yeah.
Here we go. Mm, beautiful.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
So pretty. Just quite delicious. I just, I could languish in that all day.
It's a amazing tune. It really is.
I have a friend on viewing us on YouTube, Taylor Hatch. He's a guitarist and kind of a seeking soul. He's really nice person. He said, seeing and knowing your work, is there a record or any record you worked on that you think could have been better? Or is there a project you worked on that you're most proud of?
Oh, they all could be better. I mean, it I feel like if I'm playing what's there, not to be mystical, but if I'm playing what's there at the time,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to overplay. I'm just staying with the music, then I'm cool with it, you know. And um, I don't know. I mean, most of what I've done feels to me like I did that. Um, I kind of have the mixed blessing of I've never ever been signed by any large label. Never. I've always recorded for these little boutique labels, most of them from Europe. Um, and there's a measure of, and I didn't sign exclusive with almost all of them. At one point, I went with Pirouette for 6, 7, 8 years. First of all, because I dug the cats, and second of all, because like at that point, 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in there, a lot of labels were tanking, and these guys seem to be on pretty firm footing. So they'd all been after me for a while, and I said no to all of them, which was on the advice of Paul Bley, by the way, which
Mm.
turned out to be good advice. And I talked to them all. I said, listen, do you have worldwide distribution in every country? Well, no. I said, okay, so this is just going to support, this other label, and the other label is going to support you because people in this other country where you're not strong will hear about me from this other record, and then they'll go looking for your record, you know. And they agreed to try it, and they kept coming back. So I guess I was right. But I just followed Paul's advice. He didn't say explain it that way. He just said no matter what they say, don't go with any of them. you know.
Yeah.
And and Paul was a smart guy, and a brilliant musician. So but anyway, the point is there wasn't this pressure.
Yeah.
I know good players who would be signed to a major label, and just the pressure on them was unbelievable, and do this pop tune and dress like this and blah, blah, and all this. What's that got to do with the music?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and all I had to worry about was not to put pressure on myself.
Uh-huh.
And this was the nice thing about, you know, back when I first met Dave Liebman, I was a saxophone player.
Oh, yeah. I
And
forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, and when I went to piano, it was like, okay, now I feel like I'm home. And as long as I stayed with that, none of the other stuff seemed to bother me. I was lucky that way. Um, and you're aware it's out there, but somehow it just paled in importance against the fact that I'd found where I belonged and it felt right and I could play what I heard. And as long as I stayed with that, I was okay, you know. So, that was the plus side of it. And the minus side was, you don't get the attention that some of the bigger labels uh, get if they stay with you, you know. I'll never forget Bill Stewart, terrific drummer, did several records with me. Um, One of them, the Night Whispers album, that is one of my favorites. Um, and he did Blue Note. They wouldn't sign me. They signed Bill because he became Joe Lovano's drummer. So then they were interested. And he did two albums. And I'll never forget the first album. I guess they sent me a copy, or maybe I bought it. I don't remember. Anyway, I put it on, and he'd written all the tunes, you know, and there's drummers who like to write tunes, and then there's drummers who really know how to write. Bill really knows how to write,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and I remember it very clearly. I finished listening to the record and I picked up the phone and I got his machine and I just yelled into the phone. I said, "It's so good. I can't stand it." And I hung up. So I'm sure he was pleased. Um, do you know what Blue Note did after he did a second record and they weren't happy with the sales? Now, this is a guy in Joe Lovano's band. He's touring all over the place with Joe and then later with Schofield and with Metheny, got his own stuff, arguably one of the most visible star, whatever that means, drummers in the world around that time. You would have thought Blue Note would have said, let's keep these in print because, people are going to see him play and you know what they did? Not only did they not renew his contract, and not only did they take him out of print, but they took whatever CDs they had left and melded them down so they'd have raw materials to make more CDs.
Wow, what genius
This is
thought.
what I heard. And at that point, I figured this is what's wrong with the big record companies, you know, as opposed to, and I remember very clearly
Yeah.
reading it was either article interviewing Bill Evans or interviewing Orrin Keepnews, whichever one. And I remember Bill did his first record,
Yeah.
with I guess with Philly Joe and Sam,
Uh-huh.
Jones.
Yeah.
And um, he said, "Mr. Keepnews, how are we doing with the sales after a few months?" He said, "Well, we're really not doing good. We've sold a couple of hundred." This is back when people were buying records. He said, "But Bill, you don't worry about it. We're going to keep recording you. We believe in you."
Yeah.
What a difference, right?
Yeah.
So, so I count my blessings. I
Yeah.
never had to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how success, right? I used to ask people what their definition of success was, but you know, I think everybody knew so well that it didn't really change that much from person to person as far as the words went because it's just, really basically being happy and doing what you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, if first of all, if I can't play what I feel terrible. And the couple times when I was really, really young, when I tried to do it, the music always ended up horrible. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. I'd rather like sell life insurance or something. I mean, look at Charles Ives, right? He sold life insurance, but he wrote what he really wanted to write. Um, so seems clear to me. But
Yeah,
everybody's got their own way, whatever that is.
it's true. I had more of a very individualized experience of that when I don't know how old I was. Might have been 20 years ago, and I was playing with Pete Jolly, who
Yeah,
was
sure, the piano player.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
kind of swinging, a swing player, right? That was his
Yeah.
specialty. And I think Paul Krybek was on the gig. Anyway, it was a casual. It was, like a wedding or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first set, I was desperately trying to sing like Pete Jolly, you know?
Mm,
And I was totally miserable. And on the
yeah.
break, I thought to myself, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do what I do.
There you go.
And it was
There.
magic.
Yep.
And that was a huge, huge lesson for me.
That's I've said the same thing to students or to whoever. I say you have to be able to say F it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do what I want to do, and whatever happens, happens.
Yep.
Better off. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's sometimes challenging because of um, how the human experience leads you to doing something and not necessarily realizing what you're doing until after it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was doing that. I was in this container and I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
know that I was. So it's an interesting life process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I guess I kind of avoided answering the gentleman's question, but I kind of answered it.
I think you did.
Um, I mean, I do like the Night Whispers album, and I think the Bell Tolls is kind of a nice track from that. But I mean, most of what I've done has felt right. You know, hopefully.
That's nice. Well, he also has another question. He's a deep thinker. It sounds to
Hmm.
me like you have such a deep and introspective outlook on the way music and art are intertwined. When you're composing, do you ever try to draw, sketch, color what your music sounds like?
No, I mean I'm painting pictures with the notes. And when I write, there's no. It's never premeditated.
Hmm.
I just hear it and it comes out. Um, I've been very influenced by, like everybody, I suppose, by not only things in life, but occasionally as you go through life, there's been a book here or a movie there. And I mean, I'll never forget when I was 16, 17 years old, I wanted to be a composer, right? Didn't quite work out. I mean, jazz composer, tunes, sure. But I wanted to be like, orchestras. So I got an appointment with a guy named George Rockberg, American composer, who at that time was the head of the music department. Poor guy, trying to be a composer and also head of the music department at the University of Penn in Philly. And I went down to meet him. He's in a suit and tie. He says, "Come in." I come in my flannel shirt and jeans, work boots. And he says, "So why are you applying to the University of Pennsylvania? And what do you?" I said, "Oh, I'm not coming here." He said, "What?" I said, "I'm not coming here." He said, "Why'd you come to see me then?" I said, "Well, I said, look, I think I want to be a composer, and I just started. I forget the words I used, but I said, I think I've got it in me, but I'm not sure how to make it happen. And I've been doing this and doing that. And I play some jazz and I've written some scores and I don't know." And he looks at me, he says, "Hold on a minute." He hits the intercom button and he says, "Mrs. So and so," his secretary, he says, "Hold all my calls." He shuts the door and he talks to me for 90 minutes,
Wow.
right? This is a busy guy.
Wow.
But bless his heart, he got it. He got me immediately. And he sat there and talked to me for an hour and a half. Everything he told me was so helpful. And I can't remember a lot of it. But what I do remember is he said, "Look, I can't tell whether you're going to become a composer or not." He said, "You could come in here with a stack of scores this high, right? And they could be good. And I couldn't tell whether you'd become a composer or not. He said, but you're just coming out of the shell. Here's what you need to do. And he makes me a list of 4 or 5 books. Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, and 3 books by Hermann Hesse, whom I had never heard of and who was not a big deal in 1965 in America. You know,
Right.
Siddhartha, Steppenwolf,
Wow.
and Magister Ludi, or the Glass Bead Game, Das Glockenspiel.
Yeah.
So I went out, bought the books, I read them, and I was like, this is it. This guy gets me. This writer gets me. This guy Rockberg, who doesn't know a thing right away. You know, and I was very lucky that way, you know.
So it was life realizations that
Yeah, and
steered you.
I mean, then I'd have things that did the same thing, but a little more oriented towards opening a door of how to approach the music. There's a book which I've recommended for years called The Shaping Forces in Music by an Austrian composer named Ernst Tuch, T-O-C-H. And it's a wonderful little book. It's a chapter on melody, chapter on harmony, chapter on rhythm, chapter on, you know. And boy, I read that harmony chapter till my eyes bled over and over and over again. And his basic thesis was, don't worry about wrong notes and right notes. Push the stuff around and see what happens. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
that's that's the long and short of it.
Um, what was
Your
the
picture
title of
froze,
that?
by the way. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
know we're
that's
freezing, both of us. What is the
yeah.
title of that book again?
The Shaping Forces in Music.
The Shaping Forces in Music. Nice. By the way, you won't
Blew my
believe
mind.
you won't believe this, but when I
And you
was in,
know, the way I
whoops, we're kind of crossing, I think.
came to that book was reading a book called The Professional Arranger Composer by, I think it was by Russ Garcia. He
Mm-hmm.
was an arranger composer in LA, actually. And
Yeah.
that was a wonderful little book. And in that book somewhere, he says, you should get this book by this guy and read it.
Oh,
So I did.
it's cool. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
All right, you're frozen and I'm not hearing you.
Ah, okay. Let's see.
There you are. Now I'm hearing
Okay,
you.
you can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to tell you just a funny coincidence that when I was in fifth grade, I had kind of the family life. Everybody has something, but, growing up, there was,
Nope, lost you again
oh my goodness.
after family life.
Hello. Uh, can you hear me now?
You know,
Hello?
Cathy, what I can do is I can unplug and go downstairs closer to the modem. Do you think that
Okay.
makes sense?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
don't know how to tell him to do it, but do it.
Yeah.
See if I can.
In theory, we should be able to keep the connection. Let me see how I'm going to do this with the. All right.
Okay. He's gonna try that. Yeah.
Yeah, I am going to try that.
Okay.
Give me a second. I got to
Yeah.
shrink this down. I got to eject this extra drive.
I might even play some music while he's doing that. This is one
Eject
thing that he
Box Plus.
said.
Okay. So this can come out. And I'm going to turn the speaker off.
Battery 100%.
But I remember. Let me see. So I need to turn the Bluetooth off.
In my 30s. Seems like 100 years ago, right?
Kathy, you still there?
Yes, I
went to
am.
hear
Can you hear me?
Bill Evans with Elliot Ziegman and Eddie Gomez They were playing in a small club outside of Washington, D.C. And I went with my ex-wife, who was a singer, and a bass player friend of mine.
Oh.
And I remember the club was empty. There was one other table and us. So it was 5 people for Bill Evans and Quayala. But they're up there playing, and the thing I remember about the night, I heard Bill, I don't know, 20 times maybe live, a lot of times. But the thing I remember most is the 3 of us, and we're all musicians, right? When he hits a certain chord voicing, and I know there's some musician friends of mine here, they know what I mean. He hits a certain color on the piano, and the 3 of us, our eyes are closed, we're not even looking at each other, and we all would go, we'd all sigh at the same time. It was so pretty. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I hope it works out. Merci beaucoup.
You there, Mark? Can you hear me, Mark?
Cathy,
Can
now
you
I hear you.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
I don't know if I can see you or not. Let me see.
How's that?
Ah, hold on. Now I can't hear you again.
Huh. You might, I don't know if you can hear me. I think you should sign off and
Sign off and come back in. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to restart the computer. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Well, wait a minute. Now I got you. Hold on.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, good.
But you're frozen.
Oh, you
Dang.
might want to at least sign off of Zoom and come back in.
All right. I'm restarting.
Okay. All right. In the meantime, I can tell you a few things. You might have read this up above, but it says Copland became part of the scene, the jazz scene in Philly in the early 1960s as a saxophonist, and later moved to New York City, where, excuse me, my chronic cough there. Let's see, where he experimented with electric alto saxophone in lofts around the city. During this period, Copland was, along with John Abercrombie and Glen, oh, I have to ask him about Glen, a member of the Chico Hamilton Quartet. Got to ask him about that. Increasingly, however, he was writing music with more complex chords that suggested to him an approach to music very different from his acoustic and electronic sax work. He came to feel that as an instrument, the sax was not a suitable vehicle to fully express his musical imagination. And in '73, he switched to piano. For the next decade, he labored in D.C. and Baltimore in relative obscurity while mastering his new instrument. During this period, he underwent a kind of apprenticeship, playing with well-known musicians passing through, backing up different musicians one week to the next. He worked with Randy Brecker, Bob Berg, Hank Crawford, Art Farmer, etc. And I think he's coming on now. Hello. How is it? Good? Now I can't hear you though. This is barely a problem. How is it now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great.
You know, this is not the worst problem I've had. And I was just about to tell you, see, I haven't forgotten this because it was so significant. When I was in fifth grade, I had a lot of turmoil in my family life. And the fifth grade teacher was this woman, God bless her. She was an English teacher, and she was a really far thinker. And she gave me Siddhartha to read.
Ah,
And that book changed my life.
Yeah.
I didn't realize people thought like me,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it was great stuff. So where I am now, wait a minute, I'll show you.
Basement, yeah?
You see where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
So this is John Abercrombie's old grand piano.
Oh,
I got my Steinway upstairs and I got John's down in the basement.
somehow I knew you had two pianos.
Yeah. This is better for, I got a drum set over there we can play down here, which is great.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
want to bring my Steinway down here, but it turns out it's fine down here.
Yeah, yeah. What kind of a piano is this?
This is a Kawai. I can't see the model number. It's a Kawai something. It's like a 5.5 foot, 6 foot, not very big.
Yeah.
Steinway upstairs is a B. That's a nice instrument, but this is cool too. I like it. It's got a nice. If you play chords, it's very nice.
You know, for years I had an acrosonic and I really liked it. And piano players who came and played it liked it. It was, you know, it is what it is. And
Yeah,
it's it's like having a plastic flute. The plastic flutes are actually cool. They have a kind of a warm sound. It's not like a real flute, you know.
right.
A real flute sounds better and more beautiful and stuff, but it actually is a nice song.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
whatever works. I mean, I always get asked what kind of piano do you prefer, and I'm like a good one. It doesn't. Yeah, Steinways tend to be real good, but you never know. I've played some bad ones, and I've played bad Bosendorfers, and I've played brands I don't even recognize that are actually really great. I'll have a great one.
yeah.
So
So as you were doing your thing there, I
yeah,
was reading part of your bio, and
mhm.
and Greg Garukas is here.
Great. Okay.
And he kind of got tickled that you were how it said. I think where was it? I think it said yeah. For the next decade, Copland labored in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore in relative obscurity while mastering his new instrument. And then it talked about you accompanying people. But Greg thought labored in D.C. Ha.
Okay, great.
And actually, this mentioned you played with Glen and John with the
Yep,
Chico Hamilton Quartet, but that's
correct.
when you were playing sax?
That was the twilight of my saxophone thing. And after a couple years, John left Chico's band to join Jack DeJohnette's band and also Billy Cobham's band.
Yeah.
And I left to kind of try and figure out, I didn't really want to keep going without John in the band. And um, I had to figure out what I wanted to do. And after a certain amount of time, I was like, yeah, I really don't want to play saxophone anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly want to play piano either.
Really?
I wanted to do something with harmonies. At that time, if they made synthesizers, I would have gotten myself a string synthesizer and I would have been completely happy.
Yeah.
But the only thing they had was a Mellotron. It was like $5,000 or $10,000, and you couldn't really play it on gigs. It was a bunch of tape loops. Um, and then one day I'm sitting around and I went out. It was around Christmas time. I went out and I bought every Joni Mitchell record I could get my hands on. And this is like 19, let's see, 73, 74, something like that. So I think the newest one was For the Roses. So I got everything up to For the Roses, and that was it. That was what I wanted to do. You know.
Hmm.
I moved to California. I lived in Berkeley, California for a few months. And I played jam sessions with Elliot Zigman and Ron McClure. They were out there at that time.
Uh-huh.
Ron had his daughter out there, and Elliot was living out there with his wife. And then they both, for different reasons, separately decided to move back to New York. And I moved back to New York. And then I ended up down in Washington because nobody in New York, piano, you're a. But there was a gig for me in Washington, D.C. And I commuted for a while, and then I just ended up moving. And spent 10 years there. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting because this was when I was 25, 26 years old. And because I ended up being house pianist at this club and that club, and Baltimore was like an hour away. So there were places there. And uh, I was backing up everybody. I remember Bob Mintzer, I had him down a few times. And, we were old friends. And he looked at me, he said, "Man, what do you want to come back to New York for?" He said, "You never get to work with all these cats if you came back to New York." Um, but after 10 years, I felt like it was time, you know. But there was a real scene in Washington. There were a lot of good musicians. There were an amazing number of clubs. That's mostly all gone now. And I had I had a great time. And I played with, I don't even know where to start. Harold Lamb, Blue Mitchell, Art Farmer, Curtis Fuller, Slide Hampton, my friends whom I knew, I'd arranged with the club to bring him down. Bob Berg, Randy Brecker, Mintzer, as I said, Tom Harrell, yada, yada, yada. This guy, that guy. Abercrombie.
Cool gig.
It was great. I was working all the time. But after a while, it was like I just felt, I'd sort of gotten as much as I could out of living down there, and it was time to come back.
Yeah.
And the first couple years in New York, or the first year anyway, I still commuted back to Washington a couple days a week, played 2 nights of trio, and taught all day. And that's how I made my rent. And then after 6 months, I got my first call to go to a jam session, not even a gig. Takes a while. And then I started working my way back in, and it was interesting. I almost felt like I was coming back and getting to do come back and do a second lifetime in another body or something, so to speak, another acts.
Yeah.
Starting with a different set of cats, generally younger cats, cats 5-10 years younger than me.
Yeah.
Who didn't care about what I used to play. They just liked playing,
Yeah.
And then eventually worked my way back to, I'd start doing gigs with Liebman would show up on a gig I was on, and or this guy or that guy, and start reestablishing old, ties and so forth. And it just kind of kept happening, and I felt very blessed because I people would ask me if I missed playing saxophone. I said, "What, are you kidding me?" I said, I get to play with Liebman. I get to play with Bob Berg. I get to play with Mike Brecker. This is great. I don't have to play saxophone. I'd rather comp behind it. So, it was nice. It was fun. And, nobody remembers Erosia or anything. You have to climb all the way back rung by rung. But for me, it was a pleasure, and I didn't care whether I was playing with somebody with a name or somebody nobody knew about, as long as I was playing.
Yeah. Yeah. Greg said, "Remember when you had me sub on a strip club gig in Baltimore?"
That sounds right. I don't remember the strip club, but it sounds right. All kinds of crazy things.
Or actually, one of the gigs that people really got a lot out of, actually, John Novello actually did this gig, was in the main strip club downtown,
Well, Jerry Granelli told me he used to play strip clubs playing drums, and Lenny Bruce was the comedian.
God.
So you never know,
Wow. And you must get really, like, you must get time really into you, because, strippers, they got good time.
Well, you're playing, you're not looking.
No, but you have to have good time for them.
Well, I guess. The to be honest, I really don't remember that gig, but Greg, thank you for covering for me. And what I do remember is while I was still playing saxophone, way before all this happened, I was in college actually. I was 21 years old. And I was working that summer playing a place called the Paddock in Yonkers, and it was a strip club. But, you know, it was Yonkers. So it was just like bachelor parties and it was empty usually. And it was me and kind of this really horrible drummer, no bass player. I'm playing saxophone.
Oh,
And I'm 21, right? And an African American woman must have been 50 some years old, played blues piano and sang. She was unbelievable. And I was, what is the matter with Folkways Records? They ought to sign this woman. She's fabulous, you know. So I had a great time just playing with her and listening to her. But that's what I remember of doing strip clubs. The thing in Washington, I honestly don't remember. But thank you, Greg, again. Anyway.
you know, I just have to say, you and Joey Barron could be twin brothers. Your manner are so similar.
Am I that bold?
No,
I had a lot of fun when he couldn't make that tour last February, you know, because obviously he was advertised. So we'd go into the club and I'd say,
I'm Joey Barron.
no. I'd say, listen, this, you know, after the first tune, I say, it's Drew Gress on bass. And now, you know, I like to think that we as jazz musicians and jazz fans and jazz listeners are kind of sophisticated and intelligent. And I know some of the smarter among you are looking over at the drummer and going, he's got way too much hair. So I had a built-in laugh every night. You know. Listen, Joey's a great cat. He's a great human being. He's a great drummer. I feel really lucky. There was a 5-6 year stretch. I was working with him with my trio. I was working with him with John's band and with Gary Peacock's trio. And I mean, we were together a lot. It was great. It was a real blessing, you know. Wonderful cat, great player.
Really, it's interesting, isn't it, what happens when you play with people for so long.
Yeah. But I mean, the first time we played together, it was like easy, you know. And I mean, the first recent time we'd done some stuff, you know, 15, 20 years before, you know, that I barely remembered. That's when Joey had a full head of hair. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah.
And but I remember the first time, you know, I recommended him to Gary Peacock, and the first time I recommended him, he was, nah. The second time I recommended him, he was okay. So we had a week at Birdland, and I mean, people were just coming up, you know, musicians that I knew who I didn't know were going to come, and they were all telling me, man, this is the drummer for this trio, and I'm like, don't tell me, tell Gary. You know? So, and that was it, you know.
Um, it sounds like you find inspiration. It sounds like you feel like you're connected, kind of connected to the flow, let's call it, you know. And that's how you, I don't know why. I mean, we haven't really talked about that stuff, but it just feels like that to me from what you have said today. Would you say that's true?
Oh yeah. I mean, this was the great thing about playing piano and coming from the saxophone, right? Saxophone, it was like, you know, pull out your sword and who's the fastest guy and playing the hippest stuff. And like, all of a sudden I realized that wasn't me, you know. And when I bought the Joni Mitchell records, it was like, there's something there. And then when I started playing with piano and with bass and drums, it was like heaven. And, you know, like a lot of saxophone players, including Dave Liebman, bless his heart, I was a frustrated drummer. And I would always sit down at the drums when there was a break in a jam session. Dave does the same thing. The minute I started playing piano, that was gone because I got to play rhythm with the other cats, you know,
Yeah.
and the concept of hooking up with them with the time. You don't really do that as a horn player. I mean, yeah, you play with the time, but not anywhere near to the same level of communication.
Yeah.
You know, that maybe the guy who did that the best was Sonny Rollins when he played without a piano player, the way he interacted with the drums. But still, and you know, to me, it's like I mean, other than, when I'm playing, I'm trying to play what's in the air, what I'm feeling, the sounds, the harmonies I'm hearing. But in addition to all that, it's like, what am I feeling from the audience and what am I feeling from the other players? And I don't consider myself particularly mystical, but to me, that's real. I close my eyes and I feel that stuff. And sometimes I can't pin my finger on it. Sometimes I can tell you exactly what it is. Like with a drummer, you know, the first thing I do is listen to the drummer's left hand. Where are the accents, and then I try and get with that or against that. And, the drummer's playing, and all of a sudden you go, oh, wait, the piano player's laying down comping in connection with what I'm doing. So then he gets kind of into it, and you start networking, it's great. I really love it. Making connections, flow connections, all that stuff. That's why I play, Now for that to happen at a high level, I got to be working on my stuff, because if I'm not playing something new harmonically, I'm looking down at the keyboard as I'm talking to you. If I'm not playing something new harmonically on the gig, I'm like, what's wrong with me? But if I've been spending time during the day, then I can do it. Then I'm cool. I mean, the thing about when I started playing piano, the thing about playing fast or all that all went away, and it really felt right. So I knew I was where I should be, and the rest was just learning to get what I wanted out of the instrument, which was not particularly playing lightning fast. I don't care about that. I feel like I can do it when I have to, or when I want to, but I don't want to do it all the time. And, in terms of personal taste, I mean, you mentioned Keith Jarrett. My God, what a cat. Fabulous musician. Arguably 5 greatest pianists, one hand. It's got to be on there, right? Brought solo piano back. There was no solo piano really until guys would make bebop solo records. Nobody paid attention. But to my own personal taste, the stuff Herbie did with Miles, where he's swinging, right? He's not playing a lot. He's not overcomping. The chords he lays down are just unbelievable. He's really trying to connect with the soloist in the rhythm section. And then all of a sudden, when you least expect it, just for a minute, he'll start soloing and it'll be a little bluesy lick and a little melodic lick with unbelievably hip chords accompanying him, space. All of a sudden, he'll rip off something with his right hand and you go, he could have been doing that the whole time. But that's not where he's coming from. And that really spoke to me. Keith, unbelievable. He's got all the harmonic stuff, rhythm, incredibly strong, blazing right hand, terrific. It's a different way to play. And I learned a ton listening to him, but that didn't really speak to me personally. And that, I suppose that's, at some point you got to pick a direction, right? Or you feel a pull from a direction. And with the Herbie thing, I was like completely fascinated. I was like, he could do that all the time and he doesn't. Why is that? And that really spoke to me because when I got to piano, I realized I didn't want to be the burning saxophone player, the burning front guy anymore. I wanted to connect with the cats and help build the music around everything, And if you come to that with an agenda, you can't connect with other people. And the cats that I get along with, and you mentioned people you'd seen I'd played with, the cats I hook up with best, certainly Joey and Drew with my trio now. Ferber, young guy, he's got it. kid in Germany's got it, the drummer. Um, but John Abercrombie and Gary Peacock, there's this instant understanding that like the flow and the connection is what's important, and everything else comes second. Um, and when you have the opportunity to make music with people like that, to me it becomes something else, and it just feels right. And I it's just an approach. It's not better or worse than anybody else's approach, but that's what fits for me. Um, uh, so yeah, you hit a nerve there. So
Yeah,
what
we,
else?
I can definitely hear that in your playing. So you're speaking about exactly how what I hear. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it came across. I mean, when we were listening to the Spartacus, which I'm sure I haven't heard it in 15, 20 years. And I was like, I was really kind of prepared for the worst, because it's an old record. And I thought, and I was listening to it like, I'm leaving space. I'm taking my time. It's cool. I did what I was supposed to do. And you remember, I told you I was petrified when the producer came in
right.
because I didn't prepare it, you know? And he's like, why don't you play this, like this iconic Bill Evans piece that he did triple piano. You do it solo with no overdubs. I'm like, And instead of like doing everything I could have done wrong, I just laid back on it, there was nice to hear that I figured that out. I'm sure I was so numb with fear there was nothing else I could do. Hard to play fast when you're numb with fear. You know.
Well, it's such a life lesson too, that's exactly what one should do in life.
Yeah, and I mean, the first place I really ran into that was Abercrombie. When he came on Chico's band and I was trying to be the hot young alto saxophone player, I was like, wow, what is this? Here's a guy, and he had an absolute love of the music, love of people, a love of wanting to play what he wanted, an absolute contempt for business, for being a star, for any of that. He didn't give an shit. And I was like, wow, because he was a heavy guitar player. I mean, his short stint with the Dreams brand, the Brecker Brothers band, everybody got to hear him, and we were like, whoa, this cat's amazing. And he came down to sub on Chico's band, and then he took the gig. I was like, I'm getting to play with this cat. And then when I started to hang with him and we got to be tight, I realized this is some serious stuff. And I'm not like this, and I wish I was. And what happened over the next 2-3 years is I realized, actually, I really am like that, but I'm on the wrong axe for me. Not for Liebman, not for, all these other great cats, but for me, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And then I was cool.
That's that that's a huge thing to realize.
Well, I have to say, I don't know this, but my guess is, being a singer, which I can't do at all, and the couple times I've tried, it's been laughable, and I really admire it. It's a special thing because you got nothing between you and the notes. It's you, right? I have
Yeah.
an instrument between,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So that's kind of, you're really out there naked, and which must be frightening, but it's also, the potentials are enormous. So that feeling of being vulnerable, let's say, I try and keep that every time I play, and not get caught up in the instrument, because the instrument is just supposed to transmit whatever I'm feeling, you know. And I guess the curse slash blessing, I would imagine, of being a singer is the hiding behind the instrument isn't even an option, because your voice is the instrument, and that's heavy. I can't imagine it, you know. It's hard enough doing what I do.
Yeah, that's why it keeps messing with my mind. I mean, I'm 67. I've been singing since I was born, and I'm still searching for answers to what I've been observing for years and what I think I might, the direction I'd like to go, and also like I was talking about before, when you're in a box and you don't know it, and realizing that that happens. So thinking, so have I been in a box and am I out of the box now? And, you know, where am I going and how do I get there? And it really, I don't know. I don't know if all singers feel like this, but it messes with my mind right now, you know.
Well, you know what? I think that's great. I think when you stop searching, something's wrong.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I mean, that's the only thing I've been able to figure out. And
Yeah.
you know, it's okay to search and not get the right answer all the time.
Yeah.
That's okay. But not searching is not okay. And I mean, the magic that happens when you get people together and, you know, playing together who feel that way, it's just, you know, that, and people feel that, you know, you can have an audience full of people, they don't know two sticks about jazz, but if that's happening, they can feel it.
That's so true.
Yeah. But if you try and fake it, forget it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to, you know, I mean, you know, we've all been at gigs, somebody plays real fast and high and loud and the people go completely nuts, you know. But that's not what it is. I mean, Keith, I went and heard him one of the last solo concerts he did, because, you know, Gary Peacock's manager, Steve Cloud, was Keith's manager, you know. So Steve and I talked all the time because he did Gary's band just as a favor, you know,
Yeah.
to Gary. And Steve would always leave me tickets. And I went to see it was his first solo concert in New York in 20 some years. And it was either the next best or last one. I think it was the last solo one.
Yeah.
And it was like, he was back. He was terrific. And I remember there's an album called Radiance, which has more or less the kind of stuff I heard that night. And, but sure enough, he'd play some contrapuntal, semi-modern classical, and my jaw would be dropping. I'm like, wow, this is great, you know. And then he'd, you know, start with some bluesy gospel. And the audience go, they go completely nuts, you know. Whereas when he finishes the amazing thing that I love, they were like,
Right. Like, what was that?
what's wrong with these people, you know? So, but you know, he knows what it is, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's been 2 hours.
yes, it has.
And I just want to thank you so much for giving me 2 hours here. And it's just been wonderful, wonderful to speak with you.
Well, likewise, I want to thank you. I want to thank Michael Steffens, my friend, and your friend, the really, really great drummer, great guy who hooked us up.
Yeah.
And hooked Liebman up. I had a nice time listening and watching yesterday.
That was fun too.
And yeah. So just as they say, just keep on keeping on. And thank you, Greg Karukas, for your technical suggestions, which I cheerfully ignored, but I hope everything worked out. And sorry about that club gig, which I don't remember.
Well, you know, really, we're in the moment, and that's what's happening, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm just going to quickly tell people who's on this week. I repost from the archives Thursday through Sunday. So there'll be Bevan Manson, you would love Bevan Manson also. He's an incredible piano player. He was at the New England Conservatory and classical and jazz. He's really wonderful. And then Friday is Janice Borla, a singer from Chicago. And then a really incredible bass player, David Pilch. I don't know if you know of him. He's a very unusual player and very alluring. He's really great. Then Sunday, a Brazilian singer named Claudia Villela, who's really wonderful. She lives in Carmel. And next week we'll have Suzanne Pitson and Danny Green, great pianist, and Jimmy Branley. Want to talk about a great drummer, an amazing drummer. He lives in Los Angeles.
Oh, cool.
He has chops, but he has total sensitivity. He's from Cuba. He's an amazing player.
Okay.
And what else? Oh, for those of you in LA, I actually have a gig Saturday. And the first set will be my set with Carrie Frank on B3 and Aaron Seferty on drums. And then we'll have a jam for those of you who actually are brave enough to get up and for whatever brave enough reason there is, bring your own mic or instrumentalists.
Sounds like a dream to me.
All right. And on that note, thank you again, Mark. Thank you so very
Thank you
much.
so much for all the prep work you did, and have a great gig.
Thank you.
All right.